What's up guys? A lot of you have been asking me about what I think of the new proposed changes to AD items in 4.10, and so while I'm working on the top 5 mids video, I thought I'd make this. If you haven't seen the changes yet, then I'll put a link in the description below so you can go and check them out. So this is an overview of all the changes that are coming in, and I'll break down what it's actually going to mean for you in your games in a second. So the biggest things here are that they're increasing the AD on BF Sword, Infinity Edge and Mercurial Scimitar. They're tweaking or nerfing Blade of the Ruined King and Oran's Blade. They're buffing Ghost Blade for ADs and completely overhauling the Bloodthirster. Now they're also bringing in a new item, the Essence Reaver, which is designed for AD casters, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I've brought the proposed changes up on screen because then you can see the numbers behind the changes that I'm talking about. So first up, giving more AD to these 3 items is obviously good for those items, and it's going to mean that they're way more of a priority in game, but the biggest reason why is not so much these buffs, but the changes to Bloodthirster, so I'm going to skip to these changes now. Now I'll come back to the Doran's change that you can see because it all ties in, but lifesteal is the first thing I want to touch on. So it's getting reduced across the board, and Blade of the Ruined King is not going to be as good early anymore. The active damage is down, the lifesteal is down, the movement speed is down, and the proc damage is actually going up. And the proc damage is more effective the later the game goes because people have more health, so it's not really as good as a first item as before. So moving on to the big change, the Bloodthirster change, and it's now only 300 gold cheaper than Infinity Edge. The lifesteal and AD are up slightly, but the stacking passive is gone. The replacement to the stacking passive is that you can now build a shield while you attack things that will last 15 seconds, but really they've hit the damage on this pretty hard. Now the problem is that Infinity Edge with the new buff now gives you the same AD as Bloodthirster will. They both have 80. Now you don't get lifesteal or the shield passive, but instead you get crits, and damage wise, which is what an AD's priority really is in itemizing, then you get so much more from the Infinity Edge. Now with the change to Doran's Blade, it now gives you 3% lifesteal, so if you buy 2 of them and you have 1 or 2 lifesteal runes, then you'll be up at around 9%, which is more than a Vamp Scepter now with these changes. So in my mind, if I want to do tons of damage, which I do as an AD, then I'll run defensive runes in lane, I'll get 2 Doran's Blades to help in lane, and then I'll rush an Infinity Edge. So this is the problem, like, I understand that some champions will need the defense and they'll go for the lifesteal and the shield from Bloodthirster, but you'll be doing way less damage than the enemy AD if they go Infinity Edge. The new Bloodthirster is pretty good for ADs that have a natural bonus to their damage like Cogmore or Vayne because they're pretty vulnerable and the shield is going to help, and they can afford to not get the Infinity Edge because of their W making up the difference in damage. But the reason I don't like people being able to rush Infinity Edge is because lane can now be decided by whoever gets that crit, and that really just sucks. Like, we'll be trading, suddenly the enemy gets a crit and you've lost. It's that simple, and in my opinion, crit damage belongs in the late game and not the early game. So the next big change, I guess, is the new item they're bringing in. So let's just talk about that very quickly and why I don't actually think it's going to be that good. Now AD carry is all about maximizing your damage, as we said before, but part of that is having the best combination of 6 items that you can have. You only have 6 slots, so if you take one of them up with a weaker item, then you're going to suffer late game, and this is one reason why ADs don't buy cheap items. If you think back before the Banshees changed, so it was a while ago, but the stats got buffed and it was made more expensive. No AD would ever buy it before because it was cheap and there were other items that would give you more stats. Another example of this is the Mercurial Scimitar at the moment. It isn't that great because it doesn't give you much damage for the slot, but actually with the extra AD they're giving it this patch, you'll probably see it a lot more. So let's look at the item itself. It's 2,650 gold, and the only things it really gives you that you need are the passive and the AD. Now the lifesteal we said already that you'd get from runes and Dorans, and cooldown reduction isn't really that good on ADs, it's not a priority at least. So BF Sword gives you the same AD as this item, so basically you're paying an extra 1,000 gold for the passive mana regen. Like, in my opinion, if mana is that big a problem and you want it on a caster, then you'd be better off just buying a mana mutant because Mura mana, when it's transformed, is OP as crap late game. So let's just quickly go back to the 2 changes that I skipped over. First up, Youmuu's has always been good for ADs, but actives aren't as good on them because you want steady DPS, you don't want burst, which is what Youmuu's really is. Now as an example, the reason people bought it already on Draven was to 3-shot someone and immediately kill them, which isn't really most AD carries playstyle. Now when I first looked at this change, I thought I don't really know why they're buffing it, because it's promoting more of a split push, assassin playstyle I guess for ADs, which is kind of odd, but I do expect to see it on a lot more ADs now that will actually benefit from the active. Now finally, the attack speed changes are nice, but they aren't really going to have much of an effect in your games. They're basically just increasing the cost and raising the stats at the same time, except for a Zeal where they're reducing the cost. Now at most it will probably mean that you'll pick up a Zeal earlier into the game, and it's indirectly buffing the Infinity Edge rush again, which is something we talked about earlier. So that's all of the changes that are proposed for AD, and personally, just my thoughts, I don't really like them that much. I think that buffing Infinity Edge is not the right way to go, and that item really just belongs in the late game against tanks, not in lane when you're trading each other. And the final thing I want to say is that for those of you who don't know, I'm streaming now most days, so please come over to my Twitch channel and hang out, and I'll catch you in my next video.